pen and fill the paper with the message that it wants to send.
Hello and welcome to the Aviatrix Book Review Writers Room. I'm Liz Booker. There are so many ways to publish a book today, and within the niche of women in aviation, we have a mix of traditionally published, hybrid, and self-published authors. Today I'm focusing on those of you who are considering going the traditional route with an agent from the Talcott Literary Services Agency. She spoke during the Women in Publishing Summit this March, led by Alexa Bigwarf and her team, and I highly recommend tapping into the resources at Women in Publishing, which cover everything from writing craft to marketing at very affordable prices, and the broader community of writers there, which, just like ours, is dedicated to lifting each other up and promoting the collective success of women writers. My guest today gave a great presentation at the latest conference, and I invited her to share her wisdom with all of you. She has an incredible resume as an author, book buyer, book sales and marketing director, speaker, and columnist on the publishing industry, all of which you can find at her website, amysadvice.com. You can also find her on Twitter at Ask Amy Collins, Facebook at Amy A. Collins, and Instagram and YouTube at Amy Collins. Amy Collins, welcome.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You know, I mentioned in my introduction that I came across you in the Women in Publishing Summit, which I can just not stop raving about. I think it's a fabulous resource. But you were the highlight of that. And so I'm just super excited to get to talk to you. And I'd love to hear how you came to be a literary agent and why you do it, why you're passionate about it.
I have been a literary agent for a few years, but I've been in publishing almost from the beginning of my career. Back in 1991, I was trying to make a living as a musician. And anyone who's tried to make a living as a musician knows you don't have much money. So I got a part-time job in a bookstore. 6 months later, I was their book buyer, did that for many years. And then in the late 90s, I what they call hopped the desk. I went from buying books for a small chain of bookstores to selling them for a division of Random House. I did that for a number of years. I became a national sales director, moved on. I've only worked for 3 companies my whole life, but because in publishing, they keep buying each other, I had like 10 jobs. Just because they kept selling and buying each other. Publishing just got smaller and smaller while getting bigger and bigger. I've done a lot of marketing. I've done a lot of sales. My whole career has been focused on the market. What is selling and why? For 15 years, I owned my own distribution business where I helped small presses and self-published authors get their book in front of the bigger buyers. It seemed unfair that just because you were self-published, you couldn't at least get pitched to Barnes and Noble. And now I'm old. I am old and I am tired. And so I sold my business to one of my employees who was young and not so tired. And is that ageist? Yeah, probably, but I don't care. She's doing a great job, and I have loved being an agent. I still get to focus on the marketplace, but I get to go back to my first love, which is reading. And so I focus on a very specific niche. I focus on sci-fi, fantasy, pop culture. I've got a couple of clients who do cookbooks, the things that I love. And you know, this is phase 3 of my career, so I'm really enjoying it.
Good for you. I'm kind of there myself, so I can relate to that. I'm just kind of doing what I love, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do it. So in my audience, we have this mixture of women who have published traditionally. We have self-published and hybrid published. We have some who have published multiple books, and we have some who are just now building up their confidence and considering, you know, these are women who have incredible experiences in their lives and careers. Everybody they talk to tells them they should write a book. They don't know about it, and they're just starting to think about how that might look for them. And then we have the mix of genres. I mean, we have fiction, we have biography, we have a lot of memoir, and we have some sort of leadership and kind of self-help stuff based on, you know, the survival skills it takes to be in aviation. So since we have that mix, and since we have these women who are considering their possibilities, I thought we would start with traditional. What is the difference from your perspective, and what are the pros and cons of traditional versus hybrid and versus self-publishing?
Great question. When somebody's at a dinner party and everyone around the table says, you should write a book. You absolutely should write a book. That's the most amazing story. That should be a book. Or when you are out with friends and you're making them all laugh and everyone's like, you're so funny. You should write a book. I hear that all the time. So let's talk about, because the question you just asked is what happens after you write that book? Do you go with a traditional publisher? But I want to focus on the people who are being told that they should write a book. Because if you are an extremely talented writer and you have worked on your craft and you paid attention, you've read the books, you've got a copy of Plot Perfect and Kill the Cat and all Save the Cat, excuse me, on your shelf, all of that.
I was going to say, don't kill the cat. We need the cat.
No, don't kill the cat. If craft is your thing and you're writing fiction or memoir, then perhaps traditional publishing is perfect for you. Because traditional publishers are not just looking for the wisdom that comes with business owners sharing their information and their hard-earned expertise. They're looking for that plus fantastic writing. All readers are looking at that. But traditional houses are looking for people who really have worked on their craft. Now, self-publishing, the books may be just as good. But for a traditional publisher will purchase the publishing rights of your book, not the copyright. And they'll give you a small advance if you're a debut author, a big advance if you have a huge TikTok following, or, not everyone needs to be a talented writer. I mean, you could be a hip hop star and get a 6-figure advance, but then you usually have a ghostwriter. But a traditional publisher, if you've worked on craft and if your story is amazing, will give you a small chunk of change as an advance against future royalties. And they'll offer you, let's say, 10% of whatever they make on your book as a royalty. And you sign an agreement and you sell them your publishing rights, which means they get to make it a book and an audiobook and an ebook. You're not selling them the copyright. You still get to sell it to Lifetime Television for women, for the movies. That's all different. Self-publishing, which usually works great for business owners and it doesn't work as wonderfully for memoirists, I'll be honest with you. Business owners and people who write prescriptive how-to, or who have written nonfiction books, or who have written children's books or YA books that are specifically focused on a particular theme. If you've written a book for children who have just been diagnosed with autism, or if you write if you do a coloring book for colorblind 7-year-olds, okay, that's a horrible example, but a very specific type of book, self-publishing might make sense for you. Because why give a publisher 90% of the profits if you already have 3,000 people who are all saying to you on Facebook, if you did this coloring book for autistic 7-year-olds, I would totally buy it. You don't need a publisher then. If you're a business owner who's written a book that you use in classes that you teach at the local Marriott, and if you're being flown all over the globe to speak on a particular topic, you don't need a publisher. You should probably self-publish, because there are so many amazing tools available to us now and service providers who can help you create a wonderful book. Then you're probably, that makes more sense. And the third option, the one you talked about, hybrid publishing. Hybrid publishing usually works quite nicely for memoirists, for children's book authors, like picture book authors, for some novelists, not many, but for some. And what hybrid publishing does is they allow you to tell your story the way you want to. They allow you some control over how the book looks and the editorial choices, but they support you. They charge you for this support, but they support you. They will get it edited properly. They will make sure you understand that, no, you can't put a picture that was drawn by your 4-year-old on, every third page, because that's not how books look. Hybrid publishers are really good at making sure that you don't accidentally create a book-shaped object instead of a book. Too many self-published authors create a book-shaped object and not an actual book. And what I love about hybrid publishers is you don't need to learn everything about publishing. You don't need to start a business, which you have to with self-publishers. They'll do that for you. They will charge you for it, so you better have a budget. But the nice thing about hybrid publishers is that they allow you to get some of the credibility that comes with being with an actual publisher and the marketing that comes with being an actual publisher. You pay for it without having to literally start your own publishing company or give away everything traditional publisher. Now, if I may I talk about one other type of publishing?
Please do.
Vanity publishing. Vanity publishing, which in my mind, and I'm only talking about my opinion, is a predatory it's a predatory category in publishing where it's not hybrid publishing. It's you pay someone, usually a very inflated amount of money, and they do whatever you say. They do whatever you say. They'll let you put your kid's, 7th grade photo on the cover. They let you use papyrus font. They do whatever you say. If something seems too good to be true, you should be very careful. Their hybrid publishers are wonderful. Vanity publishers are not. Please be careful when you decide to self-publish that you do not accidentally find yourself selling or giving away your publishing rights to a company that's not going to give you that added credibility. There's no reason for it.
Now, okay, you've brought up a couple of really important points. Okay, so first of which is the point about whether you are an excellent writer or not and whether you plan to pursue this as a career later. I have already done interviews with a ghostwriter to talk about ways in which you could have a ghostwriter or co-author help you write your book. And who also, and a professional editor who, if you do choose to write your book, you can at least have it quality controlled by a proper editor. But so let's just stay on that for a second, and then I have two more things. So if somebody is like, you know what, writing is not my jam, that's not what I want to do for my second career, but I do want to get my story out there. So I'm going to hire a co-author, and then what do you think is the most viable route for them to pursue publishing?
All right. Another great question. I actually do this for some of my clients. I have a few clients who have very compelling stories and could not write their way out of a wet paper bag. And I tell them that honestly. But they're still my clients because their stories are compelling and I know I can help them. I'm guilty of it myself. I'm funny. I can stand in front of a room of 800, and I have in front of 800 people and make them all laugh for 2 hours. I can't write. But I should not write a book. But I have books out there that I have had help. And so these are your options. If you do not want to make writing your career, but you want a book, you can hire a ghostwriter. Now, a top of the line ghostwriter who's got serious creds and has been on some bestseller lists, you're talking $35,000, $50,000, $80,000. That may not be your budget. It certainly isn't mine. However, if you find a ghostwriter that charges you $3,000, you probably have someone who doesn't know all the rules. Somebody who is not even a debut author. Lots of times people will hang up a shingle because they were librarians or they taught at the local community college. But no. Writing, especially if you want to write a compelling memoir or a novelized or fiction version of your life, or even if you want someone to write your nonfiction prescriptive how-to, a business owner, you need someone who's been published before, someone who's got a great deal of experience, but you may not be able to afford that. So here are your options. You can either keep your name on the book and say, I'll give you a small amount of money now to get you started, and I will give you 30%, 50% of whatever deal is cut. And you are the ghostwriter, but you can have half. We'll split it. It is my story, but it's your writing. I, as the author, I keep the copyright. You don't get that. So you don't get a royalty because royalty indicates, rights, but you will get half of everything I make. Here's something in writing promising that. And here's $5,000 to keep the lights on while you write this book. Another option is I don't pay them anything. And I actually have done this for a client. So let's say that Amy Collins wants to write a book about her travels around the United States, but I don't want to do the writing and I have no money for a co-writer. What I can do is I can call up someone like Tanya Todd and say, you and I will write the book together. It'll be by Amy Collins and Tanya Todd. My name will go first because it's my story, and my name will probably be a little bigger than yours, but you and I are going to share this. You're investing your writing talent. I'm investing all of my expertise as a business owner or this story. And to do this, if you really want to if you want to attract a good ghostwriter and not pay them anything up front, you need to put their name on the cover. They're no longer a ghostwriter. Now they're a co-author. And if all you're going to give them is, in essence, they're writing an entire book on spec, which is, you'd better have a very compelling story. You'd better have wrestled a baby from the mouth of an alligator while dating a famous star. Everyone's got great stories. And I'm afraid that we all find our stories fascinating, but that doesn't always mean they are to the rest of the world. Does that answer your question?
It's so that's the how to get it written, and it's really an important point, and it clarifies a lot of what kind of how that relationship might look or what the options are. And the follow on to that is, so then we find our ghostwriter, we find our co-author, we write the book, and then what? Do we go to a traditional publisher? Do we go to a literary agent? Do we go the hybrid route? What's the best venue for that kind of product?
Well, at this point, you still have the copyright. You are the author and the owner of this content. So the answer is no different than if you'd written it yourself. Whatever agreement you've worked out with this ghostwriter, if you decide you would like to go the hybrid route, the ghostwriter has already agreed to whatever the plan is. And so they know they're going to get $5,000 upfront and a cut of anything you sell. So it doesn't matter if you self-publish. If you sell 10,000 copies of this book yourself through KDP and Ingram Spark, and you end up making $20,000, they get half. If you end up going to a traditional publisher and getting a $20,000 advance against future royalties, they get half. It doesn't matter anything to the agent. The agent doesn't care. All the agent cares is the book good? So I don't even need to know it was ghostwritten. If you don't want to tell them, you probably should mention it to your agent, but it's not. So I hope I'm answering this question properly.
Absolutely. You totally answered it. So super helpful. And then there were a couple of follow-ons to the last conversation before we get into you and what a literary agent actually does. But first, on the topic of hybrid publishing, I have been tracking She Writes and the people there, and feeling like that is a really credible company that's kind of on the forefront of supporting women in writing and publishing. And so I just kind of want to, I'm trying to get in touch with somebody there to talk to us too. But it seems very credible. And then you mentioned sort of this predatory vanity publishing industry. How does someone spot the difference? How do they know?
She Writes is extremely credible. And so good on you. Some of the easiest ways to discover whether or not you are being approached by, or you're about to approach, a vanity press or a predatory press is simply to Google the name of the company and then a plus sign and then complaints, or the name of the company and a plus sign and lawsuit. I always do that. Make sure. So Google is our friend. Another way to always make sure you check is Victoria Strauss. I don't know if you're familiar with Victoria, but Victoria Strauss, she runs a website called Writer Beware. Writers Beware.
Perfect, yeah. And
it is a subset of the Sci-Fi and Writers of America. It started out it has exploded. Victoria Strauss, Strauss. Google her. Everyone sign up for that newsletter. It is, and donate a little something. She works really hard. And then you go to Writers Beware and you hit Control F or whatever you need to do, but you can search for who all the problems are. She keeps a very close eye on the predators. And if they're not in her her crosshairs, you probably are doing well. Another organization that really pays close attention to vanity presses and hybrid is Ally, ALLI, run by a woman named Orna Ross. Orna and her organization are based over in London, but they're international. I mean, they don't just focus on UK. And Ally has a list of all the people to avoid. And finally, and I think I'm going on too long about this, but there is a website called Editors and Predators. It has shut down once or twice, and then it's come back, and it goes back and forth. But Googling Editors and Predators, any of those. But if I was about to turn my baby over to a company, I would do all 5 of those things. I would Google with problems. I would Google with lawsuit. I would go to Editors and Predators. I'd go to Writers Beware, and I would check out Ally.
Nope, you didn't go on too long at all. That's such excellent information. Thank you so much, and super helpful for people. So the next thing I'd love to hear about specifically, before you get into the 3 points that you talked about in the Women in Publishing Summit, is what is a literary agent? What do you do and what don't you do?
A literary agent is somebody, hopefully with a great deal of publishing experience and many, many contacts in the editorial departments at major houses, who also is somewhat versed in the smaller houses and the mid-size houses in what's happening. A literary agent is somebody who will take your work, will take you on as a client, and take your work to the houses for consideration. They stay up on what's happening in the industry. They know that in April of 2022, selling a World War II novel about a plucky heroine who fights the Nazis is going to be extremely difficult, because there's a lot of plucky heroines in blue coats fighting the Nazis out there right now. They also know that the 1970s and 1980s are very hot right now. They stay up on the trends. They pay attention to what's happening. And then they take your work to the editors who are looking specifically for things. Now, can you as an author, can you do this yourself? Yeah. Can you go on Manuscript Wishlist, MSWL, huge Twitter hashtag you should all be following, and find out that so-and-so is looking for LGBTQ memoirs about pilots? Absolutely. Yes, you can do that. Will she take your, and you should, because you should know what's happening in your industry, and you should help your agent out by saying, hey, this one's looking for LGBTQ pilot fiction, send it to her. And yet
I just want to point out that we do have that. We have one wonderful author who has LGBTQ fiction in aviation. It's awesome.
Okay, I was just making that up. I was literally making that up. Later, I'm going to talk about dyslexic dogs playing basketball, and if you have an author about that,
I might not have that.
All right. But quite often, the editor will not take a unsolicited pitch from an author. They require it come from an agent. Why do they require it to come from an agent? They're not just being jerks, but agents know how publishing works. We understand comp titles. We have access to BookScan. We know that the last 2 pilot books all sold 20,000 copies in the first month, and that the last 3 plucky heroine World War II novels all sold 80 copies in its first 60 days. We know what's happened. And so they want to work with agents because they can ask us the hard questions without offending us or having to have uncomfortable, weird conversations with authors. It's my job as an agent to have the uncomfortable, weird conversations with authors, not the editors. So what does an agent do? They are a go-between. They are quite often mistaken for business managers. I am not a publicist. I am not a marketer. But after 30 some odd, I didn't say that in public, after, the 5 years that I've been in publishing, I know how to market. I know how to help with social media. Am I, as your agent, does it behoove me to help you out with social media and to give you some advice? Absolutely. But am I a social media manager? No. I am a business manager. I will help you get the best deal possible. I'll help you with tax advice, but I'm not a tax accountant. What does an agent do? She negotiates deals. She stays on top of what's happening in the marketplace. She develops relationships with whether it's a film editor or a producer, or it's a top editor for a YA novel that you want to go to HarperCollins. It's your agent's job to develop those relationships and to be a communication conduit. And that's it. They're not social media managers. They're not marketers. They can't get you on Oprah, no matter how badly they want to. And they also do not charge for this. A truly legitimate agent is not charging you $200 to read your manuscript. They either will read it or they won't. So, now there is a lot of great agents out there that also do editorial work on the side. They'll charge $700, $800, $1,200 to do a development read of your book. Absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. But if they're charging it so that then they can get your development, your manuscript ready so that they can be your agent, run screaming into the night like you are on fire. That is not okay. I do not charge my clients anything. They get social media help. They get marketing help. Sometimes I'll actually pay to get their books edited. Not always, but I'll find them a ghostwriter. I do not charge them for any of that. That is my job as their agent. And I get 15% of everything that sells. So if I think that I could make a lot more money if I run this manuscript through a quick development read, then I'm going to do that, because that's my investment in their future and my own.
Why might I need or want a literary agent if I am, sort of in this niche of women in aviation? I'm writing a memoir, I'm writing a nonfiction biography, I'm writing a fiction novel for young adults or adults. Why would I want a literary agent?
Anyone who would like their career to be writing probably needs a literary agent, because it is a long-term relationship that will allow you to grow your career much further and faster than you probably can on your own. If you've written a book that is a side gig, if it's a side gig or a side hustle, if what you mainly do is promote people, or if your business is all about getting people ready for retirement, if your business is about teaching people how to get their dog to play basketball, then that means writing is a side hustle. An agent is probably not going to be interested in you, and you probably shouldn't be interested in them. If writing is going to be your primary career, an agent is almost always, I can't think of a reason why an agent wouldn't be a good idea if it's going to be your primary career. If what you want 5 years from now and 5 books from now, because that's minimum how long it's going to take, 5 books at minimum, to quit your day job and be a writer, you probably want an agent, because they can help you. They can help guide your career all the way along. If it's a side hustle, you don't need to give anyone 15%. No reason.
That's wonderful. Well, okay, so let's say that, like me, you've done the work, you've honed your craft, you are close to being ready to publish, and you want an agent. How do you know if you're ready?
You take one project that is the most polished and it's been beta read, and then, if you're smart, you take it away from your friends and you give it to people who are published authors. I don't mean self-published. You go find some published authors who have had some success, and they're your beta readers. Too many people pick their writing group to be their beta readers, and that's wonderful, but usually your writing group is made up of people who are at your level. You need to go up. So get your book, before you go to an agent, get your book read by a couple people who are so far above you, you'd get a nosebleed if you were in their seats. And you say to yourself, well, how do I do that? You ask. There are so many, the author community is so willing to help. Go find someone who wrote a book that you admire and ask them if they'd be willing to read it. Don't give me that face. It's okay to ask.
Oh no, I'm giving you that face because I have done this, and as soon as mine is ready, I have Elizabeth Ween in the wings waiting to read my manuscript. So
then there you go. So okay, and I didn't know that, guys. I didn't know that. I'm just giving this advice. But once it's been read and checked off by somebody who is one of your heroes or someone above you, then you write the query letter. The query letter nowadays is an email, or you go on Query Manager. And every agent wants a different sort of query letter. So these classes that people take on, or these books they buy on how to write the perfect query letter, it will work for what, if you've written one query letter, you've written one query letter. It needs to be different for everyone. I love casual, funny. I mean, hey, Amy, I saw you on this like you. I saw you on the Women in Publishing, and you mentioned that you were looking for books about LGBTQ pilots. Surprise. So, here I am, and I thought this book might be of interest. I like it short and sweet. Tell me why you're writing. Tell me why you think my book's a good fit. And I'm good. Other people are very, very formal, and they want the formula. How do you know what they want? It's super easy. Go to their website. Every agent will tell you. If you buy these books that just allow you to just send off email after email, or you hop on Agent Query and you don't really research the agents that you're sending it to, you're going to spray and pray, it's called. You send out 50 queries with the same query letter. And now, can you reuse your story synopsis? Absolutely. But you shouldn't reuse your pitch. Your pitch should be different. And I know when I'm being sent a spray and pray form letter, and that means they spent no time investigating. It's not about ego, but that tells me this author's not going to do any of the work necessary once they actually get an agent, because it's a lot of work. And I am going to invest months of my life, thousands of my own dollars in your career. You'd better approach me like that's important to you. I'm just talking about me, guys. And now I like it casual. I like it funny. I don't need anything formal. But I say right on my website, I do sci-fi, I do fantasy, I do graphic novels, I do pop culture, I do prescriptive nonfiction. So if you're sending me your memoir about raising a bunch of 5-year-olds, you can see on my website that I don't do memoir and I hate children. So why would you send me your book? I ride motorcycles and I live in an RV and everything about me is on my website. And that's true for all agents. Spend a minute. Tell me you lived in an RV for 2 years and how cool it was. Tell me you ride a motorcycle. Now, I don't mean we have to have something in common, but make sure you send me a project that makes sense.
So, not you personally, and all agents have their own sort of like niche things that they like, and they list things that they don't like absolutely don't send me this, that, or the other. But then there is sort of this line between fiction and nonfiction. And so my understanding is that, with fiction, if you're writing a novel, that needs to be a full manuscript all ready to go.
Yep.
What if you're writing, now where's the line between fiction and memoir? And where's the line between memoir and like biography, nonfiction type books? And where is the proposal and where is a full manuscript on those?
All right. And this is an easy one to answer on behalf of all agents. Usually I'm just speaking for myself, but on behalf of all agents, there is no line between novel and memoir when you're talking about querying. There is no line. Novels and memoir, the rules are the same. Have your manuscript ready, have it edited, have it all written, have it polished, have it in your mind ready for publication. If you are saying to yourself, well, it's not quite there yet, but the publisher will get it there, you're not ready to query. Because this is the reason. I, as an agent, I can only help get your book from about 90% up to 95% ready for publishing. Because I will not send it to an editor until it's 95% of the way there. An editor wants a manuscript that they only have to bring it up the last 5%. They are not going to, no editor has the time right now to sign an author with promise. Nope. And they never did. There's this myth that back in 1967, there were editors sitting with red pens and a warm, mug of tea, and that they would just, and that only happened in the movies. Forget what you heard about Thomas Wolfe. Yes, his editor, slashed half of his books, but he was Thomas Wolfe. And you're probably not. I'm sorry. For the most part, your memoir has to be ready for publication. And then you send a query, or you go on Query Manager and you go to MSWL. All of you should be on manuscript wish list. There's 2 different websites that cover MSWL. Now, for you nonfiction, and I realize I'm going on and on and on, but for you nonfiction, prescriptive nonfiction is one thing. And then there's narrative nonfiction. Narrative nonfiction is not memoir. Narrative nonfiction is what Gail, like the Theodore Rex and Team of Rivals and narrative nonfiction.
Let me bring it into our context. It's The Happy Bottom Writing Club by Lauren Kessler. It is the most recent book that we read by Amy Shira Teitel, which is the Fighting for Space. So those are narrative nonfiction books.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to have to pick those up. So narrative nonfiction and prescriptive nonfiction, neither of them need to be done. Neither of them need to be completed manuscripts. You should start.
Go back. And what is prescriptive nonfiction for us?
Prescriptive nonfiction is how to get divorced, how to save your marriage, how to retire early. If it says how to in front of it, it's probably prescriptive fiction. A lot of you who want to teach other women how to do something or teach parents how to feel a certain way, prescriptive have too is self-help. Self-help, for the most part, has been, people confuse memoir and self-help. Memoir can be inspirational, which does sit on the self-help shelf, but prescriptive nonfiction self-help is how-to book, how to get mentally healthy, how to stop hating your mother, how to stop blaming your father. That is prescriptive nonfiction. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yep.
So
perfect.
Whether you are prescriptive or narrative, you do not need to finish, but there's 2 different types of proposals. You do not need a proposal if you're a memoirist or a fiction writer. Your agent will take care of your stats and your author bio and all that. But if you're going to query an agent, you are going to need a proposal, because nonfiction agents will take a proposal, spiff it up a bit, and hand it right to the editors. They will work with you on it, but they will, for the most part, they will not create it from scratch, because you need to convince the agent that your book will be good enough for them to take it to an editor before it's finished. And then that proposal, so that is what your proposal needs to do. An agent then will take that proposal and they will add all sorts of stuff to it, because then it bumps it up a huge percentage, because they then have to convince the editor that this book is worth it for them to publish, even though it's not finished yet, and will make them a lot of money. And then that editor takes that same proposal and they add more stuff and they take it to Pubboard. Pubboard is an organization usually made up of VPs in a publishing house, where the editor has to convince the Pubboard to let them make an offer on this book. So then Pubboard has to convince the sales director. And once the sales director and the editorial team, once they're on board, then you can get an offer. And an agent will then get what's called a deal memo. So it all starts with your proposal. So you have to know your market. You have to know the best-selling authors in your genre. You need to convince me as an agent that you, as a business owner or as a doctor or as a lawyer or as an expert, that your expertise combined with your writing skill will be worth my time. I'm almost done, I promise, because we haven't gotten to narrative nonfiction yet. So your proposal needs to include a table of contents, and there are classes on this, and a huge CV on your behalf, and a sample of your writing, 15, 20 pages. There's more that I can't teach a class on how to do a proposal, but that's an overview. But if you're a narrative nonfiction, if you're about to ask me I need 4 or 5 chapters. I need to know that you're writing, that you can do better than 10 pages. So I'm going to want to read 3 to 5 chapters and everything else I just talked about. I'm going to want your CV. I'm going to want your creds. I'm going to want, a list of the books and the authors that you think are best comp titles. And I really want you to ask me when I'm done answering this question about comp titles, because that's very important. And then you're ready to query.
As you were talking, I was remembering. So, my evolution in writing has been years long. I've been working on it for a long time. And so now my mind is in this sort of publishing phase of the next phase of what I hope is going to happen with my work. And so I was remembering a podcast that I listened to that like kind of described the inner workings of the things that you were talking about. What happens when your agent takes it to the publisher? I can't remember the name of the podcast right now, but I promise to share that in the comments below when I figure out what it is. It was actually really enlightening for me because I went to a writing program where we learned writing. We did not learn the publishing industry. And so that has been an evolution since then to learn the ins and outs of that. I have one question before we leave. Are you ready for a literary agent? And that is, what if I am a self-published author whose work wasn't ready when I published it, and I didn't know that. I was just a newbie to writing and didn't know the thing, and Amazon said I could publish something, so I published it. And now I realize that I could have done better, and I want to fix it up. Can I bring that what I think is a polished work, to a literary agent? Can a self-published author get published traditionally?
Do I want to tell the truth or do I want to be beloved? Here's the question.
We want to hear the truth. We want to hear the truth
Okay.
Because, it doesn't help anybody for you to sugarcoat anything. And we're all women in aviation, so we could take it.
Okay. No. But there are things you can do. But you cannot take your self-published book, make it better, take it to an agent, and expect anyone to offer it. Google exists. I'm sorry. And the first thing that the editors will do and that I will do and that we all will do is look you up. Your book. Now, if you can hide this book, if you can bury it, if you know Vinny at Amazon and, and you leave the cannoli and take the gun, and you can make that happen, if you can if you can bury this, yes, but you probably can't. And Amazon doesn't ever.
Like, say you published under a pen name.
Okay, there you go. That is a good example. I told you there were things you could do, and I was about to get to that. But no, you cannot expect an agent, because if you self-published your book and no one bought it, all the editors are going to see is this book was published and no one bought it. So, and in addition, there's so many authors out there who are writing terrific books that didn't muddy the waters by self-publishing first. Why would they pick you? I'm so sorry. I know I'm being mean. I got my mean hat on now. However, you could write another book. And I mean start fresh. I don't mean repurpose the material. You could, if you wrote your story and you would like to write it again and literally have a mulligan, then I need to see a new book. You can have the same topic, no problem. But I will tell you this. I'm going to look up on BookScan your name, and I'm going to see that your last book sold 87 copies or 200 copies or 1,000 copies. Guys, 1,000 copies is not a lot. 1,000 copies will get you in the no pile. Unless I saw that you sold 10,000 copies your first year, minimum, I am not going to be interested in an author who self-published in the past. Now, how do you get around that? I had an author who sold 3,700 copies of her first book. It was traditionally published. It wasn't even self-published. She won awards. I couldn't sell her to save my life. They're like, nope. St. Martin's published her. And she only sold 3,700 copies in the first year. Nobody wanted her. So we changed her name. And I'm not publishing the same book. It was a second book. And nobody wanted it. So she went back and she wrote a third book under this new name. Nobody wanted it. But she wrote her fourth book. She made it YA. She just got a very nice deal. A very nice deal. Persistence counts. If you are a self-published author right now in the sound of my voice, and I have just killed your dreams, and you've got tears rolling down your face, please understand that was my initial answer. But there are solutions. And it's not just changing your name and then republishing the book. I need you to rewrite that book. I need you to write a second book and a third book and a fourth book, maybe. Not all of my clients knock it out of the park. Actually, a lot of them don't knock it out of the park the first time. And even though you think that that first book was polished, I promise you that you have learned more about being a writer now. And if you started fresh, it would be a better book. Reworking something old is never as good as writing something new. Write your second book. There are other things. If you did sell 10,000 copies, I want you to call me. Yeah, I mean, yikes. But self-publishing is usually only a good idea for people who want a career in self-publishing. If you want a traditional publishing deal, then stay away from self-publishing. If you want this to be your career, self-publishing isn't meant for that. Self-publishing is meant for people who can't get a traditional publishing deal and just say, okay, well, I want my kid to have this book. I want it written. Self-publishing is good for people who have zero talent and don't know it. Self-publishing is really good for business owners who have amazing talent and don't want to give away all of their profits. The question is, which one are you? And if you're none of those, maybe you should not self-publish.
Good information. Again, awesome. So now we get to the phase, and your question about comp titles probably falls into this. Where do I find an agent, and how do I track them?
Okay. Now this could be an entire hour. And so I want to tell you, if you'd like me to come back at a later date and really talk about how to find an agent, I will be happy to talk about that more.
So you are so fabulous, and your knowledge is so you're so insightful, and you have so much experience that we could spend a week with you and probably not tap into it all. But I will say, like, one of the things I'm trying not to do here is duplicate material that, like, you can go YouTube that. There are tons of agents out there talking in depth about this, tons of resources. So, while I want to give an overview of all these things to this audience, ladies, go do your homework too. So you don't have to give a full lecture.
And you want a lot of different opinions on this. You don't just want mine. So I'd like you to repeat the question so I make sure, but I believe what you said was, how do you actually find an agent and go after them?
Yeah, so this was your second point when you got on with us in WIP, which was, how do I attract an agent? But I'm adding to that, how do you find an agent? And maybe that's too broad a question, but just
No. I hate to keep saying manuscript wish list is where you go and start looking for your genre and keywords. Now, here's the thing. If you have written a novel about a World War II pilot, and you go to manuscript wish list and you find an agent who just signed a major deal about a World War II pilot, they're not the right agent for you. They already have their World War II pilot book. They don't need another one. However, someone who says on their website or on a manuscript, I'm really interested in mid-century history. And then you look at their client list and you see that, yes, they do quite a bit in mid-century, but none of them are military. None of it is aviation, but they love the time of year. They're a good one to approach. For those of you who have it in your budget, I would strongly recommend that you get a subscription to Publishers Marketplace. You can find agents at Publishers Marketplace very, very easily because we're all listed there. Every time we sign a deal with a major, minor, or mid-size house, our deals go up on Publishers Marketplace. So if you see that this agent has signed 3 YA fantasy novels in the last year with major houses, and you've written a YA fantasy novel, they're your agent. You should and their email addresses are hidden if you don't have a subscription. But if you have a subscription, it's $25 a month. I don't get anything for recommending them. I know it's expensive, but it's an investment that's worth it. Our email addresses are there. Our entire lists are there. Our client bases, Publishers Marketplace, great resource. Agent Query, another great resource. Now, Agent Query is where I and everyone in my agency, we only accept queries through Agent Query because our inboxes are already exploding. And Agent Query is a great place. You can narrow the focus of your search by the open agents who are accepting queries in your genre. And then you can learn more about them. We all have our information on our pages. Agent Query is a great resource also because they have tons of articles about how to query. how to take. So the places that I would go are Agent Query, Publishers Marketplace, and Manuscript Wishlist. I signed a client on Twitter once, but Twitter is a great place to find out what conferences agents you want are going to. Almost all of the clients that I signed that I didn't know before, because when I became an agent, I knew a bunch of authors, and I called a bunch of people. I said, "Hey, can I be your agent?" And most of them said no. No, they all said yes. But conferences.
I'm just gonna give one to the authors here. You know, if the agent gets rejected, then just one for the team. Sorry.
Absolutely. But going to conferences, I sign a lot of clients that way, and I find a lot of projects because I'm there. I'm doing one-on-one. I see them. I find out if I like them. We find out if we jive. I've got to like the people I work with. Conferences are a terrific way. And yet, here's the caveat. If you're going to a conference that's going to charge you a great deal of money so that you can pitch to an agent, oh no, that's not okay. Now, I take pitches at New York Pitch Fest a couple times a year. I fly to Manhattan, I sit down all weekend, and I take pitches. That is a pitch fest. That is a terrific way to go. But a conference, the conferences that I highly recommend, like the Rocky Mountain Gold Fiction Conference out in Denver, or there's lots of them.
For me,
what I like about
for me, it's Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and I'm going to a conference next month, and they said that I could get as many agent reads as I want, and so I did pay. I didn't consider it to be an exorbitant fee, but I did pay a fee to get in front of 5 agents next month because that's where I am in my writing.
Oh, and if it was a couple $100, that's fine. I'm talking about the conferences. Okay. I'm talking about the conferences that say, come to our conference, and for an extra $2,500, you can pitch to movie producers. You can, no. Of course you should have to pay for a conference, $500, $700. And should you have to pay another $200 for 5 different meetings, 25 a piece, 50 a pop? Great. I'm talking about the predatory conferences. Be careful. And if you're wondering which ones are predatory, Ally, Editors and Predators, go back to that list. Conferences are up there too. So conferences, agentquery.com, Manuscript Wishlist, and Publishers Marketplace. Are there other websites and other resources? Absolutely. But again, I only have a few more minutes.
Okay, so that's how you find them, and how do you attract one? You talked about the query letter. You talked about, I feel like you covered that. So,
well, get to know them personally. Get to know them personally, as I said, and make sure that a good project. I'll tell you a little something about me. I almost never read proposals or query letters. I'll read the first line. I'll make sure that it's not a parenting book, or a children's picture book. I'll just make sure the genre's right. So I tell everyone, give me the word count, give me the genre right up front. If it's the right word count and the right genre, I immediately open the first 10, because I ask for the first chapter, the first 10 pages. I immediately open it up and start reading. I can tell in a page if you have any talent. And if you've got talent, then I'll go back and read your query, but I got to tell you, a lot of agents won't even ask for a page. They just want to see. Everyone's different. So how do you attract it?
I want to hear more about that 10 pages. And so I want to query soon. I'm submitting 10 pages to 5 different agents at the next conference. And I'm like, well, that's not enough of my story. So I included a synopsis for my story because you can't get a sense of what's going on in my story from that 10 pages. So how do you as an agent glean enough information to know that you want to read more?
I don't care about your story. I don't care about your plot. I don't care at all. At this point, I care if you have writing talent. I care if the first 3 pages of your book grabs my attention and makes me want to read more. That's all I care about. And a lot of people, 99 out of 100 people don't pass the first 10-page test, the smell test. They're not talented enough. it's not polished enough, their writing isn't good enough, or it's just not a good fit for me. They may be extremely talented, but I don't want to read about Sasquatch saving puppies. So it's not a great fit for me. And so the first 10 pages is all I need to see if you're talented. And then I'll go back and read your query. Then I will write you and I'll say, I'd like to see a plot synopsis, please. And if you're a nonfiction author, I want to see a table of contents and I want a chapter by chapter breakdown. I want a paragraph under each. And many times I'll ask for that. I'll say to people, I'd like a chapter by chapter breakdown, please. And they'll say, well, that's a lot of work. Yeah, it is a lot of work. So if you're about to query, I don't just want a plot synopsis. I also want a chapter by chapter breakdown. Chapter 3, she meets this guy. Chapter 4, this guy turns out to be, a mobster. Chapter 6, I skipped one, but you need all that. And no cliffhangers, guys. Agents and editors don't need cliffhangers. This is not back of the cover copy. Don't end your plot synopsis, Will she find happiness? Tell me, does she find happiness? Or does she find, a puppy in the bottom of the well? What happens? Give me the facts.
Oh my gosh. So I framed this in my introduction as really primarily focused on women who are considering traditional publishing, but you've given us so much more information than that because of the breadth of your knowledge. Is there anything that we left out? Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Yes. Oh, well, there's one thing that I actually asked you to ask me, and I'm going to come back to it because I want to answer this question.
Okay.
Comp titles are not competing titles. Authors are not your competition. Comp titles are called, right, they're comparable, but not everyone knows that. They're comparable titles. They're comp titles. And so when you say to yourself, well, there's no other books out here like mine, I want you to think about comp titles this way. Comp titles are not comparable titles that are like your book. Comp titles answer this question. What books out there currently have readers that would be interested in my book? That is the most important question that you need to be able to answer before you take any. I want you to be able to answer that before you go to bed tonight. It is so important to know. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to confess to you that, as a person with a Master of Fine Arts in Writing for Children and Young Adults who read over 250 books in 2 years, I am really struggling with comp titles because I'm writing YA contemporary fiction, that adventure fiction that features girls, and I'm really struggling with that. There are a few, like 1 or 2, but the storylines certainly don't come close, and so I
not about the storyline.
I will raise my hand to be like that person who is really struggling with comps.
Well, Liz, I can help you right now. Keep your microphone on. Keep your microphone on. Let's do this.
Okay.
How old is your main character or characters?
16 and 17.
All right. Okay, so this is on late YA, very late. Okay.
My target reader audience is the sort of 12 to 14 set, though. Or maybe
that's perfect because everyone reads up. Everyone reads up. But yes, YA is shifting. In another year or two, age-wise, that's going to be grown-up books. But good. So, and what time frame? What world does this take place in? Is it current day?
Current day, contemporary. Yep.
Okay. So where I'd start is the USA Today bestseller list. Yeah. Every Thursday, USA Today. So start there. Stay off of Amazon. Finding comp titles Amazon is not your friend until you're halfway through the process. And I
tried there. I'm just going to tell you, I did try there. It was no success.
You mean to tell me there are no books on the USA Today bestseller list that appeals?
No. Amazon. I started on Amazon.
Oh, yes.
That's what I said.
Yeah, don't start it. Everyone starts on Amazon. This is how to do it. Because the question is not what books are like mine. The question is, what books are my readers reading today?
Right.
I don't care what book is like yours. What are they reading today? And that is easy with a quick Google search and with a Publishers Marketplace account and a USA Today glance. Go to USA Today and you can break it down. You can break it down by genre, fiction, nonfiction, and then YA books, and then contemporary. There's subcategories. And then search over the last few years. Don't go any more than 20, 24 months back, and read the descriptions of the books. You're not looking for books that are like yours. You're looking for books that your readers have read in the last 2 years. And I promise you, you'll find some. Now, maybe they're reading books about, okay, I'm about to date myself, babysitters. Or maybe they're all reading, but the authors that you're looking for are the authors that you need to follow on social media. They're the authors that you need to Google. And you've said you've seen one or two. Did any of them sell?
Well, I don't have that information because I haven't paid for my. Is that something you can see in Publishers Marketplace? Is how well something's selling?
No, but you can tell by going to their publisher's website and seeing if they're a bestseller or not, if they've done well. You can tell if they're selling on Publishers Marketplace if they got a big advance. It meant the publisher was worth it.
I actually know the author, so I know that that's not true, and I'm not sure that it's selling well, but honestly, I think that the author probably hasn't done their part in promoting it enough. I don't know. So
okay, so here's step 2 then. Step 1 is finding some books. Step 2 is, did they sell? That's when you go to Amazon. Now, don't mind the Amazon ranking. My book hit number 1 in its category for 2.5 weeks. I sold 11 copies. 11 copies. And I think my mother bought like 4 of them. So that's not important. But if you go on Amazon and there's 500 customer reviews, that means the book did well. So step 2 is go to Amazon and don't worry about the ranking. I don't want you to look at the ranking. I want you to look at the customer reviews. Because really high-selling books have a lot of customer reviews. Do they have 300, 400, 500 or more? That's the number you're looking for. If they don't, that's not a good selling book. And what if you research and you find that there aren't any books that your readers are reading that have sold really well? Then you need to call me, and Liz will talk, because it may mean that your book needs to be set in a different time frame. It may mean that you have to introduce a slight magical element. It may mean that you just haven't found the right niche yet. But going to Publishers Marketplace, going to USA Today bestseller list, and then researching whether or not a book is a bestseller is so easy to find out on Amazon by seeing how many customer reviews there are.
Well, that's what I'm going to be doing this week after I get off this call with you, and after I edit this and push it out to the lady writers in aviation.
Well, Liz, you can edit this part out after.
No, absolutely.
We should talk.
We
should talk.
I was going to say, I'm okay making myself vulnerable in front of this audience. We're here to support each other, and this is where I am in my journey. And this is something I have this little fear creeping up my spine has been here for several years about I'm writing something that's, I know everybody wants to say there's no original idea, there's nothing, it's all been done before, but honestly, I cannot find that this has been done in this particular way before, and that makes me concerned that agents and editors are going to find it difficult to place in the market, and that concerns me a lot because this is sort of my big dream. It
shouldn't,
we're just in the uncomfortable space that I'm in right now. That's where I am.
You shouldn't be. And make sure you leave this part in. We did not talk about high concept versus commercial fiction. Mm-hmm. YA commercial fiction has to be like everything else because those readers, they want the comfort. They are the reading equivalent of fans of Hallmark Christmas movies. They want the comfort. They want to know what they're in for. And many people got to buy a lot of very expensive cars by publishing books like that. If your book is not like that, if it truly is unique, it may be what we call high concept. High concept is also known sometimes as genre busting, literary fiction. You may have written a literary fiction YA novel.
So when I think of literary fiction, I think of award-winning fiction with a deep emotional heart and really hard-hitting emotional impact. I'm writing adventure fiction. Does it have an emotional core? It does, but that's not the that's not the core of the story. So I'm terrified all around.
You have to send it to me. Liz, you have to send it to me and let me read some stuff.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
promise
happy.
me.
I will. I'll
Because
send it to you.
I find I have very few positive attributes. I am a horrible human being, but my superpower is finding comp titles. It's like my thing. I get flown all over the world to help people to teach on comp titles. So let me help. This is an easy one for me.
Oh, dang, girl. Well, I'm gonna take you up on that. I appreciate it.
Hmm.
I totally
Yeah,
appreciate
comp
it.
titles are easy for me.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered comp titles. Was there anything else?
That was the one thing. That was the one thing I wanted you to ask me. That other authors, here's my takeaways. Other authors are not your competition. They're your community. Find the readers that you share with the authors that you love, and those are your comp titles. You're not looking for books like yours. You're looking for readers that you share.
You are getting to something that's very important to me. On the one hand, I have been very vocal about cross promotion within our individual community. Like, the women in aviation are a very tight knit community, and I consider them to be our base in political terms. They're our base. They're going to buy our books because they're in it. They've either lived it or they want to live it. They want to be just like us when they grow up. So they're going to buy our books. They're going to read our books. And so there's absolutely almost an endless market within that niche for our books. So there is absolutely, we all win if we support each other. Then there is this narrative that I'm trying to develop that can help promote our books to external audiences in terms of, like, these are stories, these are not flight manuals. These are human stories of perseverance and hard work and dedication and hardship and, overcoming adversity, blah, 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 like all that will resonate with almost any woman out there who wants to be anything in her life, and a lot of men who will be completely overwhelmed and surprised by the accomplishments in our community. So, like, I love that. There's no competition here. One wins, we all win, from my perspective.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Absolutely. I'm so thrilled to hear that.
Well, Amy, thank you so much.
I
That
had
was good.
so much fun. So much fun.